The Budget Committee is actually wrapping up its public hearing side of working towards a new budget. The Treasurer visits us today, brought us very good news with respect to revenues. For the first time since the Great Recession, we have a surplus that's a little more comfortable, and there's going to be a bit more money to work with, but we have to be very prudent about it. There's been a great deal of conversation of whether we should adjust the income tax rate for what are called true millionaires, so they will pay a little bit more. The feeling is mixed, quite frankly, among members of this committee, among the legislature, but the general sense question is, or I should say the common sense question is, if we're doing okay on revenue, why should we raise taxes on anyone? I'm in that camp because we have enough money to work with. We can never raise enough money in 1 year to fix all our problems at one time, but for what's expected of this budget, there's enough revenue to work with without raising taxes. And I think that's an important thing, an important message to come out of the State House, the people of this state, that we're not interested in raising taxes on anyone. There's an interesting term that people are hearing in this budget cycle that hasn't been talked about in many years. It's called a rainy day fund. And some would say, well, what's the difference between a rainy day fund and a budget surplus? And it's not very complicated. Years ago, a law was passed at the State House before I arrived here, that if the revenues coming into the budget exceed what was expected by a certain amount, and the surplus was going to grow in a greater amount than projected by a percentage, whatever that additional money was has to be set into a separate fund called a rainy day fund, only to be used in cases where needed. Well, we have a lot of needs. So the question I raised and others have raised, we're happy the money's there. We're going to be very judicious of how we talk about spending it, how much we try to hold together. But the idea that we should be celebrating that we have money in a rainy day fund, it's really just a surplus. I have served on the Budget Committee for many years and been through some of the hardest budgets maybe ever for the state has faced, going back to the days of the Great Depression. So to be in a budget cycle where there is adequate revenue to fund the basic things we're expected to fund, public education, programs for senior citizens to help keep them in their home with regards to senior citizen property tax freeze. These are good programs, but they take money to fund. So this year, having this revenue available to us takes a great deal of pressure off. But we're not in celebration mode here because there are a great many things to do. We have a lot to do with respect to continue to get our house in order, get things right. So when the lean years do come again, and they will come, that we're better prepared to weather that storm. So there is good news today, and if we're smart, we can have good news on other days as well.